and welcome back to Why This Film, the podcast where we delve into your childhood, pluck out a movie, and have a good old chat about it. I'm Emily Slade, and welcome back. You watched it so many times before, and now you're gonna watch it again. But it's been so many years since you last saw it, and now you show it to your friends, and they're like, What?
What am I watching?
Why this film? And I'm joined today by David.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome. And your chosen movie today, very exciting, is Escape to Witch Mountain, 1975.
Yeah, it's very important to get that year right.
Because
there's been others.
So
yeah.
The IMDb breakdown. 2 mysterious orphan children have extraordinary powers and are chased by a scheming millionaire. But where do these kids really call home?
Ooh, do.
So, your relationship with this movie?
My relationship, I would have, it came out, as you said, in 1975, and I was not even 9 actually, I was 8 and a bit, because it's likely it came out before. My birthday's the end of the year, so it's likely it came out before then.
Yes.
So I would have been 8 and a bit. And I was trying to think back on this. I don't know whether I saw it in the cinema that year or not.
Right.
So it's either there, or it was likely within the next year or two on television.
Right,
okay. So
I'm trying to get my timelines right. I don't want to be rude, obviously.
Yes. I am a more mature gentleman, you're right.
Were they doing because I remember my mum talked about in the 70s they were still doing they would do a little short.
Yeah, we had a supporting film.
Yeah,
we had to come in, you get the supporting film, then the advert break and trailers, then the main feature.
Amazing.
Yes.
And that would just be on a loop.
If there was 4 showings that day, then it would be on a loop, yeah.
That's really cool.
So I was trying to remember where I first saw it. So it might have been the cinema, but it was definitely on television. And for me, I think at that age, what this film probably represents was the first time I saw children my similar kind of age doing things telekinetically and with their mind. Special powers.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked back as well in terms of when another really important TV programme for me came out, which is The Tomorrow People. And that was 1979 it first came out. So about the same kind of time that this was really kind of at the forefront of my mind, children who are able to do things with their minds.
That's really cool.
And a sidestep to Tomorrow People, I used to pretend I was a tomorrow person, I had special powers. So that's probably why this film taps into me, for me to that kind of supernatural abilities.
It's like your Harry Potter almost.
I guess it was, yeah. And a little bit of escapism and the fantasy of it all.
100%.
Yeah, so that's why I love the film, and if it was on TV again, I don't think I've seen it on TV for years.
No.
I would sit down, I don't care if I've seen it already, I would watch it from start to finish.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I've never seen this movie. I hadn't heard of it. I've heard of it in the sense, I've been talking about it a lot last couple of days while I've been watching it, and everyone goes, oh yeah, the one with The Rock, because it was remade. It was remade in the 90s, and then it was remade in the 2000s with The Rock, all with a slightly different... His was
the 90s one was just for TV, and then the Rock one, of course, was general release.
Race to Witch Mountain,
yes.
It was.
Race to Witch Mountain, that's right. I've just checked.
I didn't know anything about it at all.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it. This is fascinating.
I didn't have an actual clue. I refused to read anything about it before I watched it, so I literally came in blind.
Yes.
And I loved it. I genuinely did. I've never really seen the live action Disney movies other than the musical ones.
Okay.
I've tended to just avoid them all my life for some reason, because I'm a massive Disney fan.
Yes.
But I've never seen their Treasure Island or their 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and they had all these random ones like Bob the Cat, or do you know what I mean? They just had all of these live action movies that would come out all the time. From the 50s to the 80s.
It was a huge part of what they were distributing at the time. Mating,
Massive part of their company. Never saw them, and always wrote them off as rubbish.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah.
And I read that Walt Disney had recently died. In the end of the 60s he died, and this was 75, and this was their attempt for the studio to do something a bit darker and a bit edgier,
and it was.
And I do think I did try and yeet myself back to the 70s to be a child. I'm very good at that. I'm just to blow my own trumpet, I don't try and judge things from when they were made.
Okay.
Very much so, because you can't, like...
So get in the headspace of what was happening at that time and what were the influences and social stuff.
Absolutely, that, and also just like try and watch it as a child. But even as an adult, genuinely, I was kind of riveted. Like, it was really fun. I'd not really seen anything like it before, and it was really well structured and paced. I thought the acting was generally pretty good.
Generally, there were a few moments. We'll come to those.
Like, for kids, like, they were doing their best, and it's cute because these two kids that play the main characters, Tony and Tia, were in the Dwayne Rock Johnson
They
version.
had cameos, absolutely.
They had cameos, which I think is adorable, because there's nothing worse than what usually happens is you read up on this stuff and you find out that Tony died of a drug overdose at the age of 24 or something.
No, he had quite an
happen.
acting career, actually, afterwards.
They've both done pretty well for themselves. I honestly, like, and I'm not just saying that to, like, because I would tell you if I thought...
Of course you would. That's the whole point of this series, is you're going to be honest about stuff.
I loved it, and I was watching it on the tube on my way back from work, and literally there were points where I was like, oh no, and like all these people were like watching it over my shoulder. I put the subtitles on for them.
I read through on IMDb some of the reviews and on where I rented it from as well, looking at that, and many of the parents are now showing it to their children because it was for them. They remember it as a child, and now they're passing it on to show, and the kids are loving it.
It's not scary. Like, it's got like mild peril.
Mild peril. Thank you. Mild peril is the word they'd use nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does, but it's exciting peril.
Yes.
Like, you're worried for them, but you're not frightened, because I'm definitely more fantasy than sci-fi. I much prefer the past than the future. And aliens, I guess I'm just kind of scared of them as well.
But right from the start, we see them as two very strong children.
Yes.
From the minute they arrive at the orphanage, you can see within the first 5 or 10 minutes that they are in control in a way of what's going on with themselves. So they're not these timid little things that are scared.
But they look very sort of, you look at the poster and it's like a big old spaceship and then like these two like children of
Which is a bit of a spoiler really, because they've got a spaceship in the middle of it. Oh no.
It's like Planet of the Apes fucking DVD cover. I'm like, stop it! So I did find it a bit strange how everyone they met, and I imagine this is something that would have come from the original book to note that they were different, but everyone made a point of being like, what incredibly attractive children.
Okay.
And I'm like, stop calling them attractive. That's what they're like.
I read a synopsis of the original story, and of course there are different characters in there. The main plot line is the same. They're trying to find out who they are and where they're from. There's actually a nun and a priest in the book version, but the priest was called Father Jason, I think, so Father O'Day. So they've made some nice links with some of the characters.
Yeah, clever.
And I'm watching it second time round. As soon as those credits start, I'm thinking, this is scary.
Honestly, my first note is I'm a little bit frightened already in the opening credits.
Yeah.
What is this?
Those dark shadows and the dogs barking and the sinister music and running towards you.
Silhouettes, just on repeat coming towards you with the like psychedelic backgrounds.
Yeah.
I was really unnerved. And like literally my notes go, what is this? An orphanage? Oh my god. This is creepy. Oh my god. What are they? Telepathy!
Yes.
That's my first page.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a clue. And then all of a sudden she's like speaking to him. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I am on board with this.
Brilliant.
It's great. And he does... Oh yeah, he telekinesisizes the like bat.
You just made that word up, didn't you?
It's a word now. He uses telekinesis. Is it telekinesis when you...
Telekinesis is the ability to move objects with your mind, yeah.
He does that with a baseball bat and beats up a kid. But I was like, guys, stop doing this in public.
Well, I watched it back again, that little bit, just to see what the reactions of the kids were. Because there's a couple of comments I've made to talk about later on how the adults react to some of their abilities.
Yes.
But looking back at the children, I initially thought, they're not reacting that in a shocked way, but they were kind of they all stood back and were a bit scared of things. But then there was that almost like fear of like, oh my god, what are these children? So there was a healthy respect for them, I think.
There was a bit of an ominous response, but then it happens again a couple of minutes later. They do a similar thing. And the kids, I literally wrote in my notes, I was like, these kids are super chill about everything.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, oh, they've done the telekinesis thing again. Let's get on the school bus, yay!
Yes. Oh, that's right, yeah, when the car crashes.
When the car crashes, I was immediately on their side as well. Like, the first scene is literally like, so you've had your foster parents and now they're both dead, and you're here at this orphanage. And I was like, oh my god. Yeah. Like, I'm immediately sympathetic towards these two children. Like, immediately. It was really, really dark, kind of.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, for children of that age watching that film, I think that...
so candid about it. They're like, yeah, they're dead now and it's sad and I miss them. So I guess we'll just move. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is crazy.
But again, I think that reflects the strength of the characters and how adjusted they were. And they were their adopted parents, not their actual parents that just recently died, which is why they ended up in the orphanage. And of course, all their memories hadn't come back to them about who they actually were, so they didn't know about their birth and their origin at that point. So there was nothing for them to feel sorry about, I think.
So Tony's got a harmonica.
Yes. Which he doesn't play very well, I'm afraid.
Well, I read that the young actor taught himself to play the harmonica for the film, but then was dubbed by a professional.
Oh, no.
I know! This 9-year-old has gone to such, like, strengths to do the best he can for this role.
Because his lips are moving to different notes.
Yes.
Which is a shame. But as a child, again, when I was watching it for the second time, as an adult, rather, not the second time, I'm thinking, what would I have completely disregarded as not important as a child, versus what do I see as an adult going, oh, well, that doesn't look right, does it? And there's a few of those in there, which we'll talk about. Yeah. But... yeah, he uses the harmonica to strengthen his abilities. He can do it without, because there are some moments when he doesn't play the harmonica and he gets to move stuff. Yes. But on the whole, he needs this music to help strengthen his abilities. To focus his mind, shall we say.
To move stuff to the music, which can be both charming and terrifying, depending on what you're frightened of.
Or depending on who you are in the film at the time, yes. I.e. the sheriff later on.
Yes, like me. And she's
got a whole list of them.
Little handbag.
Oh, right, yes. I thought you were talking about her abilities, but she's got her star case. It's called a star case. Please get it right.
Sorry. She has her star case, which, honestly, when it first fell to the ground and we were meant to be establishing it, and Tony's like, that's her star case, you leave that alone. Yeah. And it's this, like... it was the only time in the movie that I was like, I'm watching something from the 70s. Okay. That's, like, been made in somebody's, like, living room, like, pasted together and then given to the actor. The prop just looks... because they've tried to make it look sci-fi, it looks like something out of the early Doctor Who's. Okay. Like, it really stood out to me, not in a magical way, in, like, that's a clunky prop kind of way, and it's the only...
which she pretty much carried everywhere she went.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, but she's always got that case with her.
Always got it on her. Yeah. And I loved it. I loved it as a device. I loved it as the, like...
well, the secret map inside.
Oh, it's got a secret map inside and it's so cool. And so she's got the star case. She can do telekinesis because in the book she's mute. And that's
that's right.
She can communicate.
And that's which reinforces their how they're seen as strange and unusual by other people because she never talks.
I do love that they gave her a voice in this because I think I would have been like, oh, I see, so the woman's not allowed to talk, is she?
Can I comment on that in terms of the gender differences? There's a wonderful line that Tony makes to Tia when they're sitting in his bedroom and they're commenting on the differences between them, and he actually says, and you're able to talk to me with your mind. Maybe it's because you're a girl.
Yes.
So there was in the book, she's got a lot more power than he has.
Yes, and perhaps it's to do with her gender, like in the Dark Crystal, where it's like, you've got wings, I don't have wings. Yeah, Don't silly, it's because you're a boy.
You're a boy. Everyone knows that.
It's cute. Like I can go on board. I can be on board with that completely. Yeah. So like the first night that they have at this orphanage, they sat up in bed.
Well, he's drawing on the mirror.
Oh, he's drawing
telekinetically with a vision that he has.
Yeah, of this like castle, and she keeps having these flashbacks to something to do with water, and they get stronger and stronger throughout the movie. But they're established there. But she sits up in bed and she's like, "Tony, can you hear the dogs?" And he's like, "No." And then like the dogs start coming in the background, these like eerie barking. Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I can hear them now." And she's like, what do they mean? I had chills. Wow. I was so frightened. I was like, what do you oh God, are you okay? Oh my God.
Yeah, she went into these little trancey moments throughout the film.
Yeah.
And again, I think there was the line, where is I've written, sorry, I'm using notes, everybody, because I won't remember things otherwise.
Of course, I always use notes.
I can't see where it is now, but he comments on the fact that you've got that look on your face again, Tia, that she's remembering something.
Remembering something.
Yes.
They're cute. They're a good little sibling couple, and they do a good job. I grew up with the Harry Potter series, where out of the 3 main actors, only one of them could act. So I'm very quick to be like, that child.
Can I ask you which one?
Shit. Rupert Grint.
Oh, really?
Ron
You don't
Weasley
think the other 2 could act?
He's a spectacular actor
Okay.
and an amazing child actor. Daniel Radcliffe was wooden, and he'll admit that. He's very hardworking, though, and I respect that a lot. And Emma Watson is a wonderful politician and activist and should continue to do so.
But that's for another day.
It's a whole
So, yeah, the story itself. I think the way the story is presented to us as an audience is great, because every step of the journey we're on board with the children about how they discover things about themselves at the same time we do.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
And each of them is little flashbacks, and you get a bit more detail of them in the water, and it's kind of our journey with them. And that was absolutely wonderful as an audience member to watch. We're totally in sync with the characters.
It's so exciting. Every time they remember something about themselves, you're like, oh God, we're in that again. You're right. It's a very clever device. Very clever.
And also, I think what was great in terms of how strong those 2 characters were is how they knew that they could manipulate the adults.
Yes.
When they've been welcomed in by Bolt as their guest, as his guest, on the dinner table, after dinner, they're just really clever with how they suggest things to them. Well, yes, you're not looking at all well. Perhaps you should go to bed. And the adults, knowing how strong the children are at that point, going, oh, am I? Oh, I better do what they say. Yeah. So again, really strong, powerful characters.
Really, really. And I guess, as a kid, you would just be like, fucking hell, this is great. Like, this is really cool to see someone my age being so
Imagine if your child then said that to their father, yeah, Dad, you're not looking at all well. I think you should go to bed. I mean,
it's like psychology almost. It's
neuro-linguistic programming. It's a little bit of suggestive talking there.
And yet they're also really sweet and kind-hearted and good-natured, because they're like, the reason they end up in this horrible situation is because they try and help someone out by being like, please don't get in that car. And good on him, he believes them and doesn't get in the car. The car gets wrecked by a truck, but then of course he's like, oh, cool.
But they know, they've had the premonition of where they're going to go, and they know that it's going to be bad, but they willingly go there because maybe deeper down within them they actually know it's going to be okay.
It's the first step of their journey that they need to take.
Yeah.
They find that as they pull into the drive, you see the dogs, and they're like, oh, there are the dogs.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I've got chills just talking about it. I'm like, oh God, foreshadowing. It's so good. They get given this luxurious bedroom full of all of the things that they could...
Who wouldn't want a bedroom like that? Sorry, bedroom. A whole suite, if you please.
It's a whole suite. It's honestly, they walked into it and I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching
with an ice cream parlour, bar, and...
it's so Disney. There's a couple of moments in this that I'm like, oh yeah, it's a Disney movie.
Okay.
Because it just got that... really well done, but so charming and so saccharine and sweet, and like
the children's room in Mary Poppins.
Yes,
that's kind of that hyper clean, perfect little world,
full of these wonderful toys and But then there is a little sequence where Tony uses his harmonica to bring the marionettes to life, and they have a little dance with Tia, and I know it's meant to be charming, but I was like, don't even think about bringing that puppet to life. Oh. No.
Which puppet? A specific puppet?
It's slumped in the corner, as puppets are, with its head down, and it's just like a doll in an outfit, and I was literally sitting here like, please don't bring that to life, and it does, and it is sweet, but part of me was also like, I'm a little bit frightened and unnerved, just because of the whole puppet marionette thing, and they're dancing of their own accord, and they almost give them actual life, in that they start having like personalities and
Yeah.
interact with Tia, and I was just a bit like, this is frightening.
Please make it stop.
Stop it. And it is
No,
meant to be charming.
that music, I think I said to you before when we were talking about doing this, the music is something that stuck with me for years and years.
Wow.
And the tune that he played, I was thinking about it before I came here today, and I recognised it as well from another piece of music, from another children's series at the time, which is, and I'll challenge you to look it up after we've gone, which is the song that Wurzel Gummidge used to sing.
Oh, I know Wurzel Gummidge.
So he had his song, his theme song with "You better wear after W," that one, and it's almost identical to the tune that Tony plays on his harmonica.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is it the same composer?
No, I didn't go into
Was
that much.
Wurzel Gummidge distributed by Disney?
No, I don't think so. Wurzel Gummidge was. I know they are. I saw Mackenzie. Mackenzie Crick. So that was interesting for me to realise that as an adult. Oh, that piece of music was around twice in my life when I was a kid.
Yeah.
With the Wurzel Gummidge and with this song, but that it's for me when I see that puppet routine, it's just jolly and happy and reinforces their abilities to me as to watching that. So there's nothing sinister for me about it.
No, and I think what it is that I'm of a different generation, and what's happened is that things that were innocent and charming in the 70s no longer go for kids anymore. So the 90s were really trying to perpetuate different things that were charming and nice, and everything's gotten mature is the wrong word, but things that were good enough for children in the 70s then wasn't good enough for children in the 90s, and now I look at...
The stakes are higher, or they're more serious in life?
I think so, yeah.
Right.
People are growing up a lot quicker. Like, we've got Pixar, which are, like, incredibly deep and go into all of these, like, things, whereas as solid a script and as genuinely entertaining as Escape to Witch Mountain is, and I really hope that children these days are enjoying it, it's very different tonally to what's coming out in cinemas nowadays.
Well, and that's what was reflected in the rock version as well, in the Dwayne Johnson version, because Tony's abilities are he is able to withstand huge force and impact just with his body, so it's a little bit of X-Men kind of thing in there.
A little bit
and
more.
the clip that they show you from the trailer is him being driven at by a huge truck and surviving it, because the truck folds over and gets damaged.
But, like, essentially you're watching a child trying
stopping a truck with his body. Yeah, about to get run over, but he knows he can stop it.
Yeah.
So that's the level of abilities.
They had to up it.
And exactly what you're saying.
And also, like, I read the plot synopsis for that, and it's very much like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the main character, a cop who is given, whereas here we follow the children, and all the adults that are characters are just part of their journey. So we don't meet what I guess the equivalent of the Rock character is until, like, we're an hour into the movie.
Yeah. Can we talk about the characters?
Please.
The other characters. Obviously, we talked about the two children. Then we've got the baddies, which I thought were very funny. I mean,
one's British,
Donald Pleasance, one of our great icon actors, who played his part of Duranium, really coldly and calmly, with to compliment his boss, I think, brilliantly, who was at times manic and over the top and quite crazy. Yeah.
But what's really clever about Disney, and there's a whole other conversation that I'm going to try not to go into here, but they're very good at making their villains both threatening and unthreatening at the same time. I'm not going to have nightmares about them.
No.
But I worry about their influence during the course of the movie.
Yes.
And it's always been the same. And it's because, unfortunately, they do sort of take these foppish storylines with them, especially in the animation. They tend to make their characters very flamboyant, as it were, to make them
and camp at times as well. Really, kind of,
which is a whole other conversation.
Aladdin, the baddie in that.
All of them.
Yeah.
Literally, you can find it in all of them. But these ones, you're right, they're a very good duo. And yeah, I would say that I was more threatened by the big bad, who was more comical, than... Maybe it's because we meet him first and we save his life.
Yes.
We feel a bit more attached to him, because I was on board with him. And even though he's hunting these children down, part of me, for some reason, applied a whole storyline where, even though it might not have even been there, that he was sympathetic towards the children, that he wanted the best for them.
Okay.
Even though that wasn't actually there, I was like, oh, he's fine. It's the other guy that's going to, like, experiment on them.
Yes.
Like, for some reason, I was like, don't trust the billionaire, but we can trust the, like, Daddy Warbucksy guy over here.
Yeah, he is a bit like that, I suppose. And he is very polite and well spoken and mannered, and doesn't lose his temper, and is kind and to the children. I mean, that they both are in a way. Neither of them have done anything in the film. If they'd been kept captured, we might have seen some other things, I suppose.
Yes,
but the threat was there with the dogs, and with them being chased later on, and the police, and all this kind of stuff building up to it.
And I think it's because, in comparison, you do, at the end, they start on this sort of witch hunt vibe. And it's him that comes
with
out
the
and
mob,
is
the
like,
angry mob.
And it's genuinely an angry mob.
Yes.
And they have fucking guns. And it's because this Daddy Warbucks guy is like, he just looks like Daddy Warbucks, that's why.
I know he does. He's bald. That's about it. That's the only thing that he looks like. He's bald.
And talks Britishy. And
okay, all right.
And he's like, I want them alive. Like, make sure that they're alive. Whereas they could easily have experimented on corpses, like they could have done.
Yeah.
And like, whereas these like rednecky people were totally willing to fucking kill these children because they thought they were witches.
Yeah.
So I was like, he's nice.
The lovely character of Jason O'Day, our hero in a way. He starts as this gruff, miserable,
Classic.
antisocial misanthrope. Who softens and becomes absolutely.
By the end. That's why I was crying.
Yeah.
I was like, you're never going to see Jason again.
And his promise to look out for other children.
Literally, when they were like, Tony and Tia are the only guys that have gone back to us. There are plenty of other children on planet Earth that need to find their way back.
I smell a sequel.
I literally, out loud, went, well, you know what you need to do now, Jason?
Yeah.
We've established that you're wifeless and childless. Go hunt for more alien children with blonde hair. And he was like, oh, well, I can look around. And I was like, wee! So when I first saw the actor, I had to pause the movie and be like, give myself 5 minutes to be like, where do I know you from?
Okay.
Where do I know you from? Yeah. And initially I was like, he's very reminiscent of the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz. But then I was like, no, that man will be dead by 1975. Like, surely he would be. And I looked up, and he was dead by 1975. So it's not the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz. But I was still like, you're in a musical. I know that much.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what the fuck are you from? And I eventually had to scroll through his IMDb.
Yeah.
I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. He's in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
The Rodgers and Hammerstein's movie version of Oklahoma with, like, I don't know, Shirley Henderson. Was that her name? No,
Pass.
probably not. I've watched Oklahoma 1,000 times.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it ever.
Yes.
He's like the guy that wants to marry Ado Annie and ends up married to the woman with the weird laugh.
Okay, that's a lot of detail. A lot of detail that I don't recognise.
He's
So
the,
let's
like,
swiftly brush that one
travelling
under the carpet and move on, shall
I think
we?
he's like got... he's got an accent and is like tanned, and he plays like a travelling salesman.
Well, well spotted though that you recognised him.
But honestly, immediately I was like, I know you.
So he's great, and then another one which I'd like to mention is actually the local sheriff.
Yes.
Because I'll talk about the comedic part, and as soon as I saw him, there's a couple of things. James Bond popped into my head while I was watching this film for a number of reasons. One, because of the baddie. When we first see Bolt, he's got 4 of his henchmen standing in front, 3 or 4 of his henchmen standing in front of him, reporting back to him like it's number 1, 2, and 3 or whatever. Right? What have you done? What have you done? And everything.
A big estate with dogs and a
yeah, and then we have the sheriff appearing later, and he's this local bumpkin who smokes a cigar and is a little bit dishevelled, and it's exactly like the sheriff who's in 2 Bond films. The same character is in. I had to look it up. 2 Bond films. This kind of sheriff who thinks he's better than everybody and he knows what he's doing, and he's an absolute buffoon and never gets it right. So the comedic aspect of that was quite fun, particularly when the kids were locked up. And then he got attacked.
Threatened.
Yeah?
Threatening. I found him threatening. Because maybe it's because I'm coming at it like, oh, it's a 1970s Disney movie. It'll be like so innocent. And then he's like, I know your name's not Castaway, it's Malone. Let me show you what happens to kids who lie to the law. And then he gets these big old keys. I was like, what
that wouldn't happen now. Where's my representative, please? My legal representative.
And he locks them in prison, and you're meant to be empowered because the kids fight their way out. And Tony uses his harmonica to bring to life like a coat stand with a coat and a hat and a broom, and he attacks the sheriff. I don't know if it's because I'm an adult, but I was like genuinely frightened for the sheriff, because I was like, if this happened to me, I would die of fear. Like, this, like, random bunch of things.
This is an example of what I mentioned earlier about some of the adults' reactions to what the kids were able to do.
Yeah.
So that's one of the three. Two of the others are whenever the policeman on the side of the cliff watches, with pretty much no reaction at all, his motorbike lift itself off the ground, upright, start itself, and ride over the cliff. The policeman just standing there as if going, yeah, this happens every day.
Literally.
That
I don't know
one.
if that was like a bad acting choice. Or
And
like...
another one, another policeman, this time with Duranian, when Tony picks up mentally, telepathically, with a gun, and it points. If I had a gun floating in front of me, pointing at me, I wouldn't be standing there looking, oh, that's interesting. How does that happen?
Honestly, when that happened, I was a little bit shooketh. So it's Tia that does it. She's like using all of her might. She's got her hands to her temples and she's like got screwed her eyes up. And they've come at them with a gun in the dead of night, which is scary anyway. But then she fucking turns the gun on them so they can escape. And I'm like, Tia, you can't take a human person's life. You don't know the consequences of that. You're 7. Like, put the gun down, Tia. I was genuine. And like, as a kid, you probably don't. I mean, you probably thought nothing of it. You were just like, yeah, that's a good idea to get out of there.
Scare them.
Scare them.
She would never pull the trigger, of course.
Dear no!
But it's just they seem to be non-phased by it.
Yeah.
You know, if there was a floating gun pointing at you, would you just stand there and look at it? You'd probably run.
I don't know if it was the acting or if it was just that they were like not comprehending what was happening.
Okay.
Because it's magic. That's why they call them witches. And they established at the beginning in the orphanage, they were like, we can't keep doing this telekinesis shit in front of people.
People keep seeing them.
In your old town, people used to call us witches and stuff. And like, whilst it's the 70s, and I mean, it didn't take very long for these rednecks to be like, it's fucking witches.
They're witches.
Well, grab your pitchforks and guns. And they literally do. They chase these children through the forest with fucking huge shotguns. I was like, they're 7. They're like literally 7.
They're a bit older than that. Come on, they are. You keep saying.
I keep saying they're 7. What are they?
I'd
like
probably
10.
put them at maybe 11 or 12. I couldn't see any.
No, because 11 and 12 is like you're in high school then.
All right.
These kids are not in high school.
In their last year at what we call primary school.
Yeah, so they're like 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Not much
10 or 11ish. Yeah. So we mentioned the music. It's the special effects. So given that they're witches and they can move things. Well, they're not witches. Sorry, they're aliens. Spoiler. They're able to move things with their mind, etc. I was quite impressed with the special effects of the time, being 1975, right up until the moment. Now, let's not talk. The end of the film is completely separate when you've got green screen kind of stuff going on, with helicopters flying upside down and floating camper vans. I'm specifically talking about the prison cell that you mentioned a minute ago, about their harmonica coming through to Tony in the cell. I saw The Wire. Yeah. But up until then, didn't see anything.
No,
the baseball, the keys moving, all that kind of stuff, none of it.
The crayon on the mirror is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it is. It's really, really cleverly done.
And as a child watching that, it builds my belief that this can happen.
Yeah.
This is real. You know, if you concentrate hard enough, you can make it happen.
But you do still know that it's practical effects.
Yeah.
Which is even better, because I was of a generation where CGI had, like, just come in.
Okay.
So, like, they were obsessively using it. And you look back now and it's fucking awful most of the time. Even in, like, big budget movies like Harry Potter. But at the time we were like, oh, it's magic. But when you go back to practical effects, there's no looking back on it and going, Jesus Christ, that's fucking awful. I can see that that's CGI.
Yeah, but these weren't. These were
like,
pretty impressive.
That gun is floating in front of you, and that's frightening.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's really good. And then also because it's Disney, they have a lot of, I guess it's a practical effect with the use of animals. So they've got their cat.
We've got the cat, the horse, the bear, and the dogs as well. They're impacted. They're affected by Tia. Is that all they are? Twinkie. No, not Twinkie. Sorry, Winky. I'm confused about Winky. Where Winky came from. She must have belonged to the orphanage.
Yeah, it's funny because we first get introduced to Winky when she helps the twins out.
She alerts them.
But she helps them out by, like, scratching one of the kids so he drops the bag.
Right.
And then Tia's like, oh, Winky helped out. And I was like, okay, did Winky come with you?
Exactly.
She didn't walk through the door
No,
with you.
she wasn't in the car with them, so I'm assuming it belonged to the orphanage or was known
But
to
then
the
they just
back.
took her.
Yeah, they stole a cat. They're really law-abiding citizens. They needed locking up.
Yeah, a little bit.
Cat theft.
But, so because Tia's telepathic, she can speak horse and cat.
She can speak to all the animals. She is a right little Dr. Dolittle.
Dr. Dolittle all over the place. Which is really, really great when it's like, that horse has never been tamed. You stay away from that horse, you 10-year-old. And then she's like, hey, Thunderbolt, do you want me to ride you? And then she can like tame this horse, and I'm like, empowering, amazing.
And when they're in the prison cell and they look out the window, there's a bear over there. Okay, you're going to be important to the
There's
plot.
a random bear in a cage.
Yes.
And part of me is looking at it from this like, especially like 90s.
Cynically?
I'm just like, animal cruelty a little bit.
Okay.
Like on set of a movie, like you used to hear about all these monkeys that were trained to like,
well, the chimpanzees that we used for the advertising the tea campaign.
Yeah, and that was around when I was a child, but then it was also really controversial when I was a teenager because people were then talking about it in a way that it was very controversial. So looking back at it, I was very much of that era that were like, stop the animal cruelty in movies. And yet also lots of movies that used animals. So Andre with the sea lion and Free Willy with the killer whale.
Okay.
And all of these things. So it's a weird mixture, and so I'm always very alert when animals are used in movies in such a massive way. Yes. So they had this there, and it was in a cage, in a
small cage.
And I was like, this is awful.
But they rescued him.
They
freed him.
But then, of course, he's like used, and this is the thing, 50% of me is like, oh no, like there's a trainer on set, and like this bear is having to do all this weird stuff. And then 50% of me was like, the bear's in the car so the villains can't get in it. Having so much fun.
On a slight side note about that, which is one of my bits of what I find funny for the wrong reasons watching again, how did the bear open the car door from the inside?
Love it.
With its paw? I mean, to somebody... sorry, that's a little bit of a funny one there to laugh at.
Later Disney movies, because I would have assumed that the rights of Escape to Witch Mountain, or Race to Witch Mountain, or
something to Witch Mountain. Insert appropriate name here.
Yeah, whichever adjective you want to use to get the audience in. I think Escape is much more interesting and mysterious than Race.
Of course, the Dwayne Johnson one was Race to
Witch Mountain, which sets you up for an adventure, but Escape does establish the mystery.
Yeah.
And I think
the threat as well. If you're escaping, you know.
But I honestly would have always been more interested in watching the 1975 version of this movie than the 2000.
Based on the name itself.
Based on the name itself, yeah, and based on knowing that in the 70s they would have had less to rely on, so they would have had to have relied on like the script and and knowing that it was like a Disney movie that wasn't being churned out every fucking day, because it wasn't until the 90s that the Disney company were like, right, we need to tap in and start bringing out like 2 movies a year.
It was driven by story and characters.
Because they had one shot, so they had to put everything into that. Whereas you know that Race to Witch Mountain would have been competing with like 5 other movies, and they would have just
huge media machine behind it.
Yeah, massive corporate like chug kind of thing. So it just like, I was like, I don't know. And if anyone wants to come on and do Race to Witch Mountain 2000 insert year here,
any Dwayne The Rock Johnson fans out there, then you know where to come.
Because I would be really interested to see it, especially to compare it to the original. But in my head, I'm just like, I know what it'll be. It'll be troping and it'll be endearing. And as you say, already they've inserted that like X-Men vibe to try and get the kids interested. Whereas this was just being. And by being, and yes, maybe there's fans of the book out there that are like, this was a terrible adaptation and it ruined everything. I don't know. Maybe there is. But from what I saw, I was like, this was a solid movie. I can't fault it for its plot structure.
I can start faulting it when we get towards the end, I'm afraid. And which brings us neatly onto the ending. And I felt really disappointed and let down.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. It kind of, well, for example, all the baddies got away with it, scot-free.
Interesting.
Nobody was punished. Nobody got caught.
There were no consequences.
No consequence. Thank you. That's the word. No consequences for their bad actions. So that was a little bit disappointing. And then also just the tied in with the less than brilliant special effects that we're used to now. Watching that camper van fly through the sky, watching the helicopter fly upside down through the sky, and more importantly, land upside down, which the laws of physics would not permit. So the willing suspension of disbelief, I guess. I had to go, David, it's fine. 1975, it was fine. But as an adult now, going, no, I don't get that. I don't like it. Stop it. It's wrong. So those sorts of things. And then just the way Uncle Ben arrived and kind of they said their goodbyes and off they go. It was like, oh, that's it. There was a kind of escalation and kind of the chase, and then will they get caught, won't they get caught, what's going to happen and everything, but then just nah.
It just sort of wrapped itself up very quickly.
Yeah.
See, I disagree. I finished it like half an hour ago, and I was literally watching it in the street a la Belle, like watching it on my tablet walking home, and they're being chased, and Jason's like looking around, and they're about to, like, someone's like come in and stop them on the road, and they're blocking the road, and they're about to smack into this massive car, and I'm like, fuck, what are they gonna do? Like, genuinely invested, invested. And then the camper van takes flight.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I wonder where they got that from in E.T., that idea.
Yeah. Well,
E.T. came after, obviously, so the E.T.
E.T. would 100% have got it. But like Grease, so many things. There's literally a category on Netflix where it's like movies that end with the protagonists flying away.
Oh.
Because there's like Grease, there's E.T. Like,
yes, they do in Grease as well.
So many things that just end with people flying into the sky, which is bizarre. But I honestly didn't see it coming here.
You didn't? Oh, wow. So what did you think was going to happen? When Uncle Benny arrived in the woods, you saw him in the distance walking up towards them. What did you think was going to happen?
Well, this is the thing, because even before that, I decided what was going to happen. And this was like an additional joy. So they're on the phone and they're like, don't worry. Make your way to us. Don't lose them.
They've been in contact, with their family.
They're in contact with the family. We don't know who's on the other end of the phone.
No.
And I was just like, oh, it's just some random alien.
That is, it's still at that point I'm with them. I'm absolutely on board. Oh, because I'd forgotten what happened.
They're like, oh, we make sure that you don't lose them because we want to make sure that they're going to leave you alone forever because we're going to do something. And I was like, cool. They're going to bring up the spaceship.
It builds it up to this big thing, and then it's like,
Big thing, we're going to put them in the spaceship and they're going to fly away. And that's what was in my head of them.
Yeah.
The spaceship's going to rise out of the woods and they're going to get in and they're going to go. But then the camper van takes flight and I was like, oh, is this it? Oh, this is cool.
Okay.
Oh, this is fun. Oh, this is really interesting. And like they're cheesily like waving to the helicopter from the camper van. And I was like, this is adorable. But also that was another moment where I was like, I'm watching a Disney movie.
Yeah.
This is very Disney. And it's because there was such a drawn-out thing, because then suddenly you see the camper van upside down, and you're like, what the fuck? And then they're like, what the fuck? And they're like, camper vans can't go upside down. Camper vans shouldn't even be flying. And I'm like, lol, 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 lol. And then it pans out, and you see, and they're suddenly like, we're upside down. And I'm like, ah! I was having such a good time. Like, honestly, I was like, this is fucking great. And the camper van lands, and they're like, Uncle Benny! And I was like, oh, I thought you died! And they were like, we thought you drowned! And he's like, no, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh, I have family!
Yeah, but did you hear what he said, though? Oh, I'm fine. It's all very important if you know how to talk to a passing shark.
No, I missed that line!
Oh, yeah. That's how he didn't drown, because he knew how to speak to a shark who helped him not drown.
Oh my god!
And so that's quite a funny line, actually.
That's amazing. I missed that line. I mean, that throws up the whole gender debate as to, is it just women that can talk to animals, or is it just Tony being shit at all the powers? Can't even do it without the harmonica. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, some of the things I was amused at as an adult watching it were some of the obvious setups where things were placed or mentioned. They're going, that's going to be important later on. Yes. That's important later on.
I live for plants and payoffs.
Do you?
So I'm all about that life.
The giant lever that was needed to open the gates at the mansion. I'm thinking, that's ridiculous. Who'd have a lever like that? You just have a little button. But no, there's this huge, heavy lever.
Cynical.
I am.
You've really got your like...
I didn't have my claws out for it, but I'm watching it again.
But your like adult face on. Whereas it almost
a little bit
Disney expected.
Yeah, but then I would say, but as a child watching that, I wouldn't have noticed that. It wouldn't have been important to me.
Yeah, and it kind of wasn't important to me. Like it kind of took me back to being a child watching this movie. Like I was fully on board, and maybe that's a comment about me as a person, or maybe it's a comment about the movie, but and why Disney is still so big today, because it takes you back to your childhood in such a big way. And I mean, I'm not far from my childhood, especially as a product of the 90s. Like,
I'm a little further.
But like, especially our generations, you know, I'm 27 and I'm still calling up my parents every day to be like, what the fuck? Whereas my mum had like 2 kids at my age. So we're a very immature generation in that sense. Okay. But yeah, there were so many things in this movie that it's interesting though, because if I had been watching this in a cinema, if I'd paid money for it and if it was a new release, perhaps I would have been sat there like, oh, that's pathetic, that's rubbish, that's so stupid, like why would they do that?
Yeah.
But because I was watching it on my tablet for a podcast, as a child's movie, knowing what I was going into, I almost expect, it's terrible, I almost go in and expect these movies to be a lot worse than they actually are. So then when they're good, I like really overly enjoy them. So I was like, amazing.
The other bit as well that I remember looking at this time, Ryan, or listening to, was whenever Tony said to Tia, oh yeah, that's why you're really good at opening locks. Hello. You might be opening some locks quite soon, I feel.
So funny. I did not acknowledge that at all. They were in the prison cell and they were like, gosh, we've really got to get out of here soon, haven't we, Tia? And they like try and open the window. And I was like, oh, are they going to escape through the window? Forgetting that they were fucking magical aliens that could do whatever the fuck they want and bend reality on Earth. Like, honestly, I forgot. So when they started doing all this stuff, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, of course. Oh, wow, great. Like,
they can get out of anything.
So stupid. I completely bought in to what the movie wanted you to notice and not notice.
Yeah,
and
right.
like,
I was more aware of those things, I suppose.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to look out for them, but because they stuck out for me as an adult, going, and nothing is there accidentally.
Yes.
It's put there for a reason, the script, the props, the storyline, but really children don't notice those sort of things. So then when it happens, going, oh wow, they can do that.
Yeah, of course. But also, like, as I say, I love a good plant and payoff because I respect the storytelling of it and the storytelling aspect of it, because I feel a lot in a lot of movies that I was watching as a teenager and as a early 20s, they don't bother. It's very lazy script writing, it's very poor script writing. They'll start something that doesn't go anywhere, or they'll not establish something and then someone will suddenly be able to do something. And I would much prefer for it to be like pandered to and very much like, we can open.
Don't forget, we said that earlier, and now
you're later we're opening a lock. Like, I much prefer that than just like shit writing.
Yeah, you're kind of watching a film going, why on earth did that come into the? They haven't mentioned that before.
Like,
what's it about?
What the fuck is this going on? What? So I would much rather be pandered to the point of patronising.
All right, but I don't think that was. I don't think the orders were being pandered to at all.
No,
I think it was.
It's just solid script writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plants and payoffs.
So some of the other things as well that I find particularly funny in this, watching it this time round, were these. And I mentioned a couple of the motorbike riders' vacant look when things are happening. But in the prison cell, why doesn't the policeman hear the harmonica being played at the window? It's quite obvious he's playing it, and yet he does not hear it. There's a moment when I'm watching going, oh, I think he hears... No, he doesn't. He just turns away again. And it's really obvious. In fact, there's a whole orchestra playing along.
There is, isn't there? Whenever the harmonica plays, like a band joins in.
Yeah.
And it was halfway through the marionette scene that I was suddenly like, oh, there's like other instruments playing right now. Like, this is really bizarre. And it's lovely because it like adds to the moment.
Of course.
But when you suddenly become aware of it, you are like, well, Tony, you're playing that harmonica really well.
Here's my backing band. Another couple of them. I've mentioned one as well, a helicopter landing on its rotors. But I noticed this time I had to rewind it to actually count this. I'm thinking, there's a scene whenever Mr. Bolt goes to the helicopter for the first time. I don't know if you noticed. How many people does it take to escort Mr. Bolt into the helicopter?
How many?
I watched this and I went, and these people kept appearing on screen going, what are they doing? Why are they there? It was hilarious. And I rewound it, and it took 7 people to make sure Mr. Bolt got on that helicopter safely.
hilarious.
I know.
You know that would have been a choice.
There's some in
establish,
dungarees, there's some in suits. A lot of
was.
them in dungarees. I suspect that the helicopter engineers, for some reason, may be fearful that the helicopter might not work. But I rewind it, I counted them all, I went 7. There are 7 people behind Mr. Bolt, making sure he gets on all right.
That's amazing. Was there a sequel?
Well, yes, there was. They made Return from Witch Mountain, which also starred the same 2 actors playing Tony and Tia.
Oh, good.
But with 2 new baddies.
Oh.
Played by wonderful Bette Davis.
No.
Yes. And another great actor, Christopher Lee. You
Fuck
know
off.
You know them?
Bette Davis and Christopher Lee.
Bette Davis and Christopher Lee was, I don't know when it was made, obviously that was the first one was 75, so I would suspect
Probably
maybe
like
within 2 or 3 years later.
1980,
And that was a huge time for them as actors. Christopher Lee was a major
like just
horror
all the
star,
Hammer.
and all the Hammer House of Horror stuff. And Bette Davis as well was still getting, okay.
She's all about Eve, right?
Yes, she is. One could argue that this might have been a step down for her, but it was Disney and... You know, she was a major star. To pull that off.
To watch a Disney movie with Christopher Lee and Bette Davis as the fucking villains.
Yeah. Hammy
money.
can over the top.
Money for that. I would pay so much money for that. That sounds amazing. And the original, was Jason in it?
He wasn't in that one, but he came in again in the next one.
There was a next
There
one?
was a next one. There was Beyond Witch Mountain.
How many adjectives?
I know.
It genuinely is a good story.
Yeah.
And it genuinely is a lot of fun and could have a lot of stuff to say to a new audience.
And based on your comments earlier about having to up the ante, as it were, in terms of what the children are able to do, I can only imagine what their abilities might be now.
Especially with CGI as it is. Like, yeah, it could be... It has the potential to be very good. Do we see Witch Mountain? Is that the mountain that they're driving on at the end?
I think it is, yeah. Locally, it's been nicknamed Witch Mountain. And then right at the end, you've got a shot, actually, of where the spacecraft flies to. Interesting, because it takes off from behind a tree, and then it flies up into the sky, and then it disappears off. Then it ends up going into a valley shrouded in mist.
Yes, it does.
So whether that's at the top of that mountain, there is a valley or somewhere that's hidden from the public, where the castaways, that's their name, they call themselves the Castaway family, that's where they all live. So that is Witch Mountain.
Because they mentioned how their original planet was like destroyed, and that's why they crash land on Earth into the ocean. It's honestly really solid. Like, I'm actually kind of interested to read the original book.
Yeah, I'm very pleased I suggested the movie and introduced you to the movie, because seeing your excitement about it is wonderful. And,
honestly.
you know, fast forward 10, 15 years, maybe when you've got children, you show them this movie.
I 100% will. And it's made me more interested in going into other Disney live actions.
Yeah.
Because there's
There's masses of them. Even for me as a child, when we used to have bank holidays and holiday times, when The Wonderful World of Disney would come on, which is like this half-hour showcase of Disney films aimed at children. So you'd have a little introduction by Walt Disney himself talking to the audience, and he would introduce the films. You'd have maybe a little animated one, a little snippet from Bambi or something else. But whenever the live action ones came, I was like, oh, it's live action, give me a cartoon.
Yeah.
You know, at that age, I was much more interested in watching the animated ones, because those appealed to me more. But this, being live action, no, this must have had a very different effect on me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, that was
for
fun.
coming on. Have you had a good time?
Yes, I have.
Yay! And I genuinely enjoyed this movie.
Cool.
Like, I actually did. I'm waiting. Someone bring something on that I'm not going to enjoy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to plug? Do you want people to find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook, of course, and the very exciting, riveting LinkedIn. But I'm not on any other form of social media at the moment. I don't tweet. I don't Gram, or whatever you youngsters call it.
I
don't snap.
Insta,
I don't snap. I don't gram. I don't tweet. But I'm sure they will happen soon enough. So I'm no need to plug me. Here I am. You can find me on Spotlight.
Yay! Yes, watch this space.
Yeah.
You can find me, Emily Slade, on Twitter at EmilySlade1. You can find me on Instagram at EmilySlade001. You can find Why This Film at Why This Film on Instagram, at Why This Film on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook at Why This Film Podcast, and you can email into us at whythisfilmpodcast@gmail.com.
Ta-da!
So much. I've gotten so good at that. So please feel free to write in if you watched this movie, if you watched any of the remakes, if you hate this movie, if you have a lot to say about this movie, if you have nothing to say about this movie, let us know. We're on all forms of social media. Remember to subscribe to us, leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you are enjoying our podcast. And if you want to be a guest on this movie, feel free to email us in with suggestions of your movies. Until then, we'll see you next time on Why This Film. Bye!
Bye! We watched the
film and we talked about it, but now it's time to say goodbye. We'll be back again with another movie that makes you wanna ask why.